So I was going to start off by saying a couple of just quick words, and I wasn't going to talk, but because I'm not sure that I can make it through this, but I'm going to try it. So first, I just want to say, cancer's taken my great grandpa, my grandpa, my dad, and unfortunately my uncle can't be here because he's not probably far behind. And I know it's devastated a number of families in this room. And so I'm going to start by saying, fuck cancer.
Cheers.
All right. I'm not sure how long my dad knew he had cancer, but he knew, when I looked back through his notes, he knew well into late summer that this was going to be his last goodbye. And so he threw a pre-funeral party in October that only he knew was actually a pre-funeral party. And all he wanted was his friends together. So he had a plan of how his life was going to end, and this is exactly how he wanted it to go for him. He didn't want sadness, he only wanted a celebration of life that he had lived with very few regrets, if any. Unfortunately today for me, celebration and sadness are side by side. I want to thank you for coming and celebrating my dad. Dad requested that Steve give his eulogy, so I'm going to hand this off to him. But I think that Dad decided to leave a little earlier after Steve's motorcycle accident because he was afraid he was the one that was going to be given a eulogy. A man that has been by my family's side since my first memories, Steve Kosick. Him. Thanks, Gary.
Dudley Gerber. Enough said. That was one of his favorite pat sayings when he had to talk about himself. It's not to say he didn't like stories. He loved to tell stories. He would have a story for every single one of you here if he was here. This is what he wanted. We used to have board meetings. He and Moose Milliman would orchestrate board meetings. Actually, they were old guy meetings, but you couldn't say that. They'd call them board meetings. So every couple months we would meet up in St. Cloud, about a dozen of us, and we'd get together and tell stories. Well, we were all kind of long in the tooth, and invariably the stories would filter down to, that's not how it went. You weren't even there. And so we had to have a fact checker. That was Art Schlegel. Well, I tell you what, Art's accuracy seems to be fading a little bit, so he was, we weren't sure whether we were going to have to impeach him or what. Anyway, we've got all our friends together, and all his friends, and he knew each and every one of you differently. He had many, many different times of his life, in his life, different things. My job today is to help get things started to tell stories. The first thing we need to do, we need to sing a song. And Dudley was spiritual. I don't know if you can pin a religion on it. He did he always kept trying to get me to read the Book of the Dead. About the Dalai Lama. I'd get through the first couple pages, and all I got out of it was that it was okay to die, and you would just change clothes. That was it. Well, anyway, so we're going to sing, and then I'm going to give you a couple stories to give you some insights that I had about Dudley. And I'm going to turn over the mic to Kubi, I believe, and we're going to try and do a group picture. We're going to try and do that outside, and if we can. And everybody has to point. Dudley loved to point. I don't know what he always wanted to point at, but he says everybody has to point. I'm afraid that if we point, we might see a big orb the size of a hot air balloon going over, and that might be Dudley. I don't know. But we're going to try and take a picture if we can. So, let me see what I got going here. Dudley was complicated. He was smart some of the time. He was funny. He was driven. He always had a project. And again, he was spiritual. He was a high school football star. Did you know that? Oh, he was, you look at his annual, he's the guy down on his 4-point stance and everything. He was the big star until he blew out his knee. I'm not sure what's going on. In fact, I think it was the Star Tribune wanted to do an article on him. And they were going to come out and interview him at the school. Well, they couldn't do it because Dudley got kicked out of school. And the principal said, well, we can make an exception. We can have you come back just for this day. Dudley says, no, you kicked me out of school, I'm not doing it. No, not gonna do it. So they never did it. Okay? He aspired to be an FBI agent. Did you know that? But you know, you got to get a law degree first. And he said, well, no, not doing that. But I don't know why he did, because he got a whole bunch of other degrees. And he became a very successful individual, usually in a profession where you boss people around. Superintendent, he was student supervisor up in St. Cloud. And that's where I got to know him best. In fact, we lived in an old liquor store at that time of his life. It was myself, Soup Campbell, Toast Ogle, and Dudley lived in this old liquor store. And Dudley never seemed to have homework, never seemed to have anything to do with that. Soup had all kinds of homework. He was a Phi-Ed major, and Dudley would always help him with his homework, which consisted of juggling. And where's Soup? Soup had to write his feelings down, after he juggled, so Dudley would help him with that. And then what else did he? Oh yeah, Soup had to invent games that you had to use a ball with. So Dudley would always help him with that. But they were always drinking these little Wally beers. Well, I don't know, I was not as smart as these guys, so I had to go to the library and think about it. So one night, I went to the library, and way back then, we didn't have streaming, we didn't have CDs, we had record albums. And they were really expensive, they were like $2 to $3. So we really took care of them. We had rules with our records, and I had rules with mine. I was OCD about one thing, and that was my records. You never touched the grooves. You took one out at a time. You didn't stack them because we had cheap record players, and you put them all away, one at a time. You could play it as loud as you want. That didn't matter, whatever the stereo would tolerate. Well, I went to the library and thought about stuff, and it was time for me to come home. And driving down 3rd Street North, those of you that know St. Cloud, it's a pretty busy street. And it was dark out. I could see the lights on in the old liquor store. And all of a sudden, you can kind of hear some music, and the door flies open. And here comes this guy running across the street doing the Deer River Shuffle. Well, if you don't know the Deer River Shuffle, ask John Hahn. John Hahn didn't invent it, but he perfected it. Well, so it's Soup Campbell dancing across 3rd Street North, a very busy thoroughfare. And Soup sees me, and he runs back into the house. And I go into the house, and there's Soup standing there, records, all my records. They're on the floor, they're on the couch, they're on the arm. They're stacked up. None of them are in their jackets, and I'm furious. Soup's just standing there. Where's Dudley? Dudley pulled his first Dudley that I started to become aware of. Gone. Poof. Smoke. Barricaded, I think, in his bedroom. I didn't see him till the next afternoon. Anyway, that disappearing thing? They say it's a tradition in, like, Ireland. They think it's, so people, they disappear and they never say goodbye at a party. That was Dudley. He never said, were you ever at a party where he said goodbye to you? I don't think so. And in Ireland, I think it was, so you didn't have to give your keys to anybody. Anyway, I don't know. He would just pull a Dudley. So, not to say he wasn't a good schmoozer either. One day when he was early 70s, he had what did he have? A 52 Chev, mint condition. I think it was blue. We were out at his farm, and he said the party was over. And he says, "Let's go for a drive." I says, "Well, okay, you drive." And we're driving around. We were pretty fortified, and geez, it turned into an all-nighter. And all of a sudden, we found ourselves in Winstead. And we're coming down Main Street. We're going east, and it was a hot time in August, about 70, early 70s. You could see the sun over the lake, no ripples whatsoever. And Dudley goes, "God, am I thirsty? My tongue feels like wood. We got to get something to drink." Well, we didn't have any beer left. We didn't have any pop and water. Just thirsty. Nothing's open. Nothing's gonna open. This was back in the 70s. And then all of a sudden we see Jim Williams walking to the bar. And Dudley pulls over and says, "Let me do the talking." Jim, can we come in for a minute? We gotta talk to you. We go in, "Oh, okay, you guys come on in." "Jim, we're so thirsty, we gotta have a drink." And Jim just wants to clean up and get out of there. And Dudley talks, okay, you can have one. "Okay, you got any good orange juice? We'll have 2 tequila sunrises." Well, do you guys know Jim Williams? He was not gonna put up tequila sunrise. "I'll give you 2 tequila sunrise. You get 1 beer and you knuckleheads are out of here." Anyway, I think we got 2. Dudley would push his way into stuff too. I just learned this from my little sister Cindy Decker the other day when we were texting. I said, "Make sure you bring a story." "Oh, I got one. She said she was, I don't know if she was at my mom's place. We didn't have cell phones or any of that stuff way back when. And she was going to call up her house to see if her husband Denny was home. So she calls, and the phone answers. "Well, it's not Denny." "Well, who is this?" "Well, this is Dudley." "Well, where's Denny?" "I don't know, he's not home." "Well, what are you doing in my house?" "I'm drinking beer." Anyway, so, gonna cut this a little bit short, but I want to talk about one of his best friends in, I hope I get through this. I'm not supposed to look at his wife Cindy, so we won't get through this. He loved kids, and so he would throw money all over the driveway and the garage. And anyway, one of his friends was named Oliver. His name, Oliver. And Oliver, I think, was probably about this tall. And his MO is, you'll see him in the fall, he'll be pulling his pumpkin wagon around, and he's selling pumpkins, price negotiable. But anyway, Oliver decided he's going to make a plaque. Here it is. It says, "Thanks for the fun, bud." Does that break your heart or what? Anyway, made the plaque. "Thanks for the fun. Dudley Gerber wants you here telling stories." Enough said. Toast to Dudley. Okay. With that, share your stories. Anybody wants to get up here? I think we have a little bit of order. We have to have Mr. Kubash. Mr. Kubash has a story or two too. And afterwards, at what time is it? 1:15. I'd like to maybe try to do that picture. Will that work? 1:15 out front. We're going to do a group picture. Okay? Everybody's going to be here for that? If you can. Okay. Kevin Kubash.
Hello, everybody. Just a little lead up to this. What I'm going to read was written by Steve Milburn, and Steve and Julie are unable to be here. Their cover is they're on a cruise on the east side of South America. But I had some intelligence info. We all know that Julie liked her continuing education. She's always taking classes, right? So the cruise is just a cover. They got dropped off in Guatemala, and they are currently walking through Mexico with a bunch of illegal aliens. And the reason is Julie is going to write a paper about her experience walking through Mexico and testing out the security of the southern U.S. border. So, I mean, that's what my intelligence agency told me. So, anyway, here we go. This is written by Steve. Julie and I are so sad that we couldn't be here today to trade Dudley stories with all of you. My first memories of Dudley Gerber was as a freshman at St. Cloud State College. I was a gangly, unshaven hippie wannabe, and there he was. White back shoes, polo shirt, and $1 million tan, strolling the campus on a warm fall day. Somehow we hit it off and became lifelong friends. Lifelong friends was the term we used a lot during our life path. Whether it was a serious event in life or just driving around the countryside, eating my mom's tomatoes and drinking beer. I always kept a salt shaker in my car. Dudley was a well-educated man, having set a college record as a 7-year student. He promptly set his goals in life and went to work with old Denny Campbell and soup painting houses. Dudley's career interest varied from concert festival promoter, wood stove dealer with Kubi, that's me, Florida painting adventures with Sam and Art, and finally school administrator. He had many goals in life. Among those would be a competition between himself and Dave Earnhardt to see who was the most frugal. Dudley was a spiritual man later, becoming a reverend of sorts, marrying both his children, Garrity and Heidi. Heidi came into his life later and was a blessing. With Garrity and Dudley, I usually didn't know who was the dad and who was the kid. Speaking of blessings, then there was Saint Cindy. As far as Cindy goes, who can forget the frozen 5-gallon bucket of urine from a Mille Lacs Lake fishing trip that Dudley hauled home because he didn't want to pollute the lake? Cindy had to look at that monument till the spring thaw. Yes, living with Dudley guarantees Cindy an express lane into heaven. Well, I rattled on way too long. Julie and I would like everyone to raise a glass to lifelong friends. Thank you, Steve. Okay, real quick. One thing I would like to do is thank Saint Cindy for the care that she provided Dudley. I mean, not only during the last days of his life, but for sure the last 20 years regarding his mobility. And I know Heidi and Garrity are right alongside with Cindy, and thanks for taking care of our buddy. Another compliment would be to Garrity for writing the obituary for Dudley. I know my friend Steve Sachs-Kosick, we talked, And Sachs referred to Garrity as a wordsmith, and I think that's very good. He did a very nice job. After knowing Dudley, I think probably Charlie, that's how I got to know him. Your dad was into horses, and John Gerber was into horses. Charlie and I were in high school. So that's 50 plus years. I mean, 52, 54 years that we've known Dudley. And when it comes to stories, where do you start, you know? But here's a good one. St. Cindy allowed, this is back in 2001 and again in 2002. Cindy allowed Dudley to go to Florida with me, and we flew there in my airplane, a little four-seater Cessna. So I had prepped Dudley, you know, I said it's going to be from Winston to Sarasota, Florida. We're going to visit Chuck and Jane Rathbender. And my folks were also snowbirds up on the Panhandle near Panama City. So Cindy gave Dudley the green light, and I think the first year we were gone start to finish 13 days, and the second year we were gone for 20 days. So leading up to the first trip, I told him, well, you're going to have to pack light. The airplane can only carry about 1,100 pounds. And, yep, no problem. And I said, well, we're looking at about 9 hours of flying time. So I'm going to try and break it up, you know, every 2.5, 3 hours. We'll stop, you know, get out of the plane, maybe get some fuel, go to the potty, stretch a little bit, you know. And, oh yeah, okay, sounds great. So, we're out at the Winston Airport, loading up the plane, probably 8 o'clock in the morning. Comes with a nice light little suitcase, you know, okay, you did good there. All of a sudden, here comes, getting back to Dudley, I mean, he was a recycler, he was a repurposer, but here's a brand spanking new plastic funnel. And for you guys, it was a type of funnel that you would use to put automatic transmission fluid into your vehicle. Well, here's the funnel in one hand, and the funnel had a pleat in it, kind of like an accordion, you know, you can move that tube around. Well, the next thing was a brand new little 1-gallon gas can. And I'm going, okay, Gerber, you know, you packed light. But what's the get up with the funnel and the little gas can? And he called me, after that trip, he called me captain, like I was the captain of the airplane. He goes, well, Captain, it's just in case I can't make it to your first stop. So there you are. Hats off to Dudley. Heidi, I guess you're next.
Oh. I need my tissue. Okay, morning, I'm a crier, so this is gonna be hard. Dad, I know you're up in heaven, but damn, here we go. It still hurts like hell. I'll get through this, I promise. Where do I begin? Can you hear me? Okay. I'm guessing some of you don't know me. I'm Heidi, my dad's oldest, favorite, and only daughter. I first met my dad when I was 18 years old, going to college at St. Cloud State. He pulled up to Hull's Hall dormitory. I was so nervous yet excited. He was funny, handsome, full of joy, and had the most beautiful blue eyes. It was one of the biggest moments of my life. We went to Red Lobster, which was his favorite. Little did he know at the time that I'm a vegetarian, so I loaded up on those delicious garlic bread that they served there. We spent time starting to get to know each other and build our relationship. As years progressed, so did my love for him. I have 2 boys, Brody and Bryson, who adored Grandpa Gerber. This is where it gets tough. Grandpa would tear up. Woo! Cheers! Okay, Grandpa would tear up so many times watching the boys fish off the dock. When they were younger, when they were younger, we would pull up, and he'd be sitting in a chair outside of the garage, which we called the sunny side of the garage, anxiously awaiting our arrival, with coins scattered all over. He would have all of the fishing gear laid out so they could run down to the dock and drop the lines in the water. He would anxiously wait for them to catch enough fish to clean and have a fresh fish fry. Sometimes when they didn't catch enough fish or they weren't big enough, he would pretend to keep them and use the frozen fish that Dave Earnhardt gave him to make sure, thank you Dave, wherever you are, to make sure that they could eat until their little bellies were content, because apparently fresh fish out of Lake Chippewa is the best. Over the years, our relationship grew so incredibly strong. Some of my favorite memories are of him taking me and the boys out fishing, sitting on the sunny side of the garage, spending time at the shack, watching him dance, listening to his stories, in which to this day I'm not sure which ones were made up and which were bullshit. He was one hell of a storyteller. Getting frustrated, having Cindy have to finish his story or sentences when his mind went blank, I can relate to that. Pretending to be sleeping when someone would stop by and he didn't want to speak with him. So many memories. One of my favorite recent stories was when Dad was driving, so this was a little while ago obviously, but he heard a rattling noise coming from his car, and it was coming from the trunk. He had Murnau, he adopted Oliver's little Murnau, he had Murnau with. So Dad pulled over to the side of the road. He opened his door, he went to the trunk to figure out what was going on. And what happened? Well, Dad left the door wide open, so Murnau hopped out. Dad always thought Murnau was a smart dog, but what ultimately happened is Dad fell on the ground, and he laid there for 2 hours on the ground while Murnau explored, doing his thing. Two guys eventually came by Cindy. They helped Dad back up on his feet. So every time he told the story, I wasn't sure, do I laugh, do I cry? But every time he told it, it got funnier and funnier. But he asked me, he's like, hey honey, have you ever just laid on the ground and stared at it for a few hours? Yes, nobody in here has just laid on the ground and stared at it. But he said, it's pretty amazing, all the sights and smells that you can see. Only my dad would find beauty in laying face down in the grass for 2 hours. I'm surprised while he was there, he didn't find rocks for the kids to dig out or something for them to build. He found so much beauty in the little things such as rocks, trees, cloud formations, sunsets, pretty much anything tied to nature. Education was very important to him. He was thrifty when it came to spending money on certain things, but rewarded Bryson $100 last year for pulling straight A's because he was so proud. Dad was probably, this is longer than I expected it to be. Dad was probably one of my biggest fans. 2 things he initially hated but grew to love were my tattoos, I have quite a few, and my love for long distance running. He would get so nervous when I would tell him I had a race coming up, so I got to the point where I would quit telling him, but I would tell him when I finished. Backtrack to September 2023, I had a 100-mile race in northern Minnesota. He knew about this race. It was a tough race. I was wanting to quit at mile 72. I had shed some tears, threw out a few too many swear words. I had a pity party for myself. But about 2:35 when I left the aid station, I told myself, hell no, this is not how I want my story to end. So I finished the race. I listened to this voice message Dad had left the following day. Mind you, I had not heard this message until the next day, so I'm not sure if this will work, but I'm gonna try. So for those that didn't hear it, at 2:39 that day that I was racing, my dad had left me a voice message. I didn't get it till the next day, but he had said he was thinking of me, and he just knew like I was gonna finish that race. So it's just those crazy moments in life. But that was the last message I had for my dad, and he was so proud. So proud of not only me, but Garrity, all of his grandkids, Jax, Juno, Bryson, Brody, and I'm gonna throw Oliver into that mix as well. He considered you a grandkid and an old soul. And who can forget about superhuman, superwoman Cindy? Cindy. Oh, yeah. You put up with a lot over the years. You were Dad's right-hand first wife, as he was referred to many times. He never showed much affection, at least that I saw, but let me tell you, Cindy, those last weeks when he was on hospice, and it was just him and I at the shack. Come up here, cry with me. He made it very clear to me, Cindy, how much you meant to him, how grateful he was for you, and how much he loved you. Cindy, thank you for being a rock, picking rocks for Dad, and allowing him to put that rock on your finger years ago. You're nothing child. I love you. I'm almost done, I promise. Dad, we missed out on the first 18 years, but that's okay, as we've made up for it. And I'm so incredibly grateful to have been by your side the last 26 years and have you as my biggest fan. I'll miss your hugs, your kisses on the cheek, your emails, your stories, your shitty grin when my boys were doing something naughty, your laughter, your love. Every time I trip on the trail, I see an eagle flying over, I have an orange soda, I watch those sunsets, and I find loose change in random places. It won't be the holes in your pockets, but you by my side. I can't wait to see you again. Promise to continue to do my best to make you proud. And I will leave you with this advice from an email from my dad that he sent me January 18th in 2019, because he wasn't feeling good then, and I wanted to save special moments. But anyways, he finishes his email with, keep warm, drink hot chocolate, pet all the dogs, friends, and enjoy life. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak?
All right, this is Robin Oster.
As some of you know, Dudley and I, besides being very good friends, we're cousins. Our mothers were first cousins and best friends. I have known Dudley for as long as I can remember. So when I got the news that his cancer had come back and he had not that long to live, I decided, okay, I have to write Dudley a letter and tell him how much he's meant to me throughout my entire life. I wasn't sure if he had gotten my letter because I sent this, I think it was Thursday before he died, but I heard from Cindy that they were able to read it to him, and so it was heartwarming. Otherwise, I was hoping he would be here in spirit, just like he always thought Jack was in his memorial service, flashing those lights on his way out before the party at the Clubhouse. So here's the letter I wrote to him. Dear Dudley, I was sad to hear your health has taken a downturn. I wanted to let you know how much you meant to me. We certainly had a lot of good times over the years. The parties at the Clubhouse were the best, especially Chuck and Jane's wedding. Loved seeing your mom walking down the aisle as a flower girl, tossing out her flower petals. We had so much fun playing volleyball with our jungle rules at Hans, which then became your farm, plus many other places, including the great bicentennial party up at your lake place. We set the net up in the water, and I think we played volleyball for about 3 days, right? Remember our party on top of Inspiration Peak, where we carried a cake to the top? I know a number of people who have partied up there since it was not far from where I went to school at Morris. But I don't know anyone who hauled the keg to the top for their parties. I'm so glad I took a lot of photos at our parties and also at your very fun Bluegrass festivals, Flat Earth Society. I will be forever grateful to you for the beautiful eulogy you gave for Bruce, my brother. In the past couple of years, I've had to deliver a couple of eulogies myself, and I remember what you told me. Make them cry, then leave them laughing. I did just that and got high praise for them, but I was trained by the best. Unlike you, I had to write mine and read them. Delivering yours without even notes was amazing. I guess that was the professor in me. My first memories of you were when my parents took Bruce and me along to parties with their parents. That was a long time ago. I'm so glad you grew up and remained friends. Love you. Okay, so I didn't exactly leave you laughing, but you said you needed to do the eulogy, but this wasn't meant to be a eulogy. So I do want to tell you a little story that I hope will at least make you smile. Okay, about 30 years ago, Dudley came to me and said, Robin, I have something I need to confess to you. And you know, we hear a lot about Catholic guilt, but you Catholics have nothing over us Lutherans when it comes to guilt. That is also a burden for us. When I was about 10 or 11, I went on a trip with my parents out west, and from what I've heard, my brother was on the phone as we were driving down the driveway saying, okay, time to start the party. Okay, fast forward to about 30 years ago when Dudley comes to me and says, Robin, something has bothered me for many years, and I need to confess this to you. Please forgive me. Remember when you got home from your trip out west and your little parakeet was dead? Well, I was told by my brother that it was a mystery to him. He just found it dead in the cage. Dudley said, I gave your bird vodka. He said, I wanted to see how it would fly. But it just fell right over dead. And I did something that he never expected I would do. I hugged him. I said, Dudley, I hated that bird. I never wanted the bird. My mother wanted the bird. She was the one that bought that 4-foot cage for it. But if they gave it to me for a birthday present, then I would be the one that would have to clean that cage and feed it and give it water. And I especially hated it when a bird would fly around. I think that was about the time that Eulogy the Birds came out. So, you have nothing to worry about. Now, whenever I see that cage up in the attic, I think of Dudley and smile.
All right. I'm Garrity. I'm Dudley's son. Dudley was a man of tradition. His favorite story at Christmas time was that when he was a child, all he got was a tin car and a hammer. And after 15 minutes, he only had a hammer. He gave me the same white miniature toy dog in my stocking every single Christmas. And when I reached my teenage years, he added a lump of coal that I got over and over and over again. My mom's anniversary card and her birthday cards have been signed repeatedly for decades. And even though these don't seem like special moments, for some reason he had the ability to make them special. He performed 11 weddings, including both mine and Heidi's, and he had a way to just make tradition unique to whomever he was preaching to. My dad taught me many life lessons, some more useful than others. He told me it was a bad idea to get honey by smoking bees out of the hive while locking it in the trunk of a car, because that'll start it on fire. You also don't make moonshine indoors over a gas stove. He told me not to marry every girl I dated and not to date every girl I married. Some of his lessons were even more obscure. If you bring beer to the ghost living in your attic, he'll start leaving you alone. And a clean vehicle runs better than a dirty one. A lot of his lessons stick with me to this day. If you don't want to talk in the boat, you back troll with the motor running. That is why he never owned an electric motor. He didn't want to talk while fishing. Be kind to every person until they no longer deserve it. He told me to treat the cooks and janitors at school better than the superintendent. He taught me to take care of my stuff and that fixing something old is more important than buying something new. If you're falling, tuck and roll. And if you don't spin your wheels, you can't get stuck. He taught me that sometimes you set the hook and sometimes you let out more line. And that's because fishing took finesse, and finesse was an art. And Dad saw the art in everything in life. He appreciated animals and especially their quirks. He enjoyed nature, sunsets, still waters, and rolling waves. And he was a heck of an artist. He was able to freehand paint just about anything. He made totem poles and chainsaw sculptures. He carved pipes out of pipestone, made leather crafts, and a whole host of other creations. He found the beauty that existed in everything around him. And he was smart, full of useful and useless knowledge. He had a lot of theories and advice. He understood physics and taught others that they could move the world if they had a big enough lever. He was an inventor, and if you saw his lawnmower or his wheelchair, there was no shortage of homemade contraptions. And to this very day, only he and I can operate the engines that he owned, but if he owned it, there is a hole in the air filter cover, and that's for the starting fluid. Dad meant a lot to many people. He told me once that he was a shepherd of shepherds, and he only lost one follower along the way. He had a special way about being able to be your best friend and call you a dumbass when you did something stupid. He rarely showed affection, but you knew if he loved you regardless. You knew it because he was there in the worst times of your life. In the worst times of your life, he would be standing there ready to help out or take control of the situation. He had a way of making you a better person. I'm not sure if he saved many lives, but I know he saved mine, and I know he saved the life of at least one other person in this room. And it is with this that I will leave you.
A Buddhist, they asked him how long the guy asked how long do I have to live? And he said 4 days. He said, oh, I need to get my house in order. And the Buddha that he was talking to, I don't know when the 4 days start or end. Bingo. Bye.
And I know that Dad is still with me and still with us. And he will show up when we need him the most. So please look to the sky, appreciate a sunset or a sunrise. Find the beauty in that eagle soaring above or the chipmunk on your deck eating seed corn. Thanks for the good time, bud.